We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by go. You know the thing.
The idea is we hold these truths self-evident that all men and women. We haven't lived up to it completely, but we've always widened the arc.
Greetings, superior beings, greetings, supreme being. We are all the human race. Our common enemy is death. Welcome on the emergency channel. I'm Org Hoffman, and this is the broadcast. Could the attack on the USS Ronald Reagan be a false flag attack carried out by US or Israeli intelligence? So, well, I have some articles lined up for this live stream. Let me know what you all think about this. I will go into the false flags more. In the background we see a crown in the left bottom corner with the Hebrew text Moshiach, Messiah, and behind me a picture of a nuclear weapon going off. Aren't nuclear weapons obsolete? And red heifer has been born in Israel, and that supposedly announces the coming of the Messiah, the two false messiahs, fake messiahs. There will not be a real Messiah because there is no real God, and the time-traveling AI will never become the creator of heaven and earth. So we must prevent this world war. And what did I write? Russia is an ally of Iran. Prevent, stall, sabotage, contain and end World War III. Prevent MAD, mutually assured destruction. World War III should never be. Strive for universal peace. Mankind must put an end to war before war puts an end to mankind. John F. Kennedy quote. So, let's start this broadcast. Preventing beats curing, I always say, and scalar weapons have made nuclear weapons obsolete. And we should prevent the splitting of the earth, which Nikola Tesla claimed he could do with his scalar technology, the radiant energy patent, etc. that I've covered in my video about scalar patents. So what else comes to mind? Well, now it's GANs, of course. So it's an old picture that I've used for a previous broadcast, because that's what this reminded me of. This recent attack that we've seen. Let's go to the next image. The nuclear torpedoes of Putin that can create 90-meter high tidal waves. Perhaps it's best if I turn off my VCam thing. It's not properly rendering with the light coming from above. Next one. The world's ballistic missile submarines. So there we can see it divided in the US, Russia, China, England and France, and then India and China. Or what's this flag? I don't even know what the right bottom corner flag is, basically. And I cannot really read on my screen what's written next to it. Anyway, we get the picture. And the question is, with all these missile shields, as well as the Iron Dome, how many of these missiles could reach their targets with the scalar weapon technology that can remotely fry the circuits of these nuclear missiles? On navalanalysis.com, this picture. And estimate of global nuclear weapons in January 2018. Russia leading with 6,850 warheads, USA 6,450. And the US has spent more on defense than all the other countries combined, I've read somewhere. And that was on cpri.org. This is a picture, the only picture of a Tesla plasma shield. It's about 3.5 kilometers in diameter. And nothing can penetrate it, not even scalar waves. And scalar waves cannot be shielded with any material known to man, only with the Tesla plasma shields. This is a picture of Death visiting all these countries, and Death is wearing an American flag outfit, knocking on the doors of these countries, and then we see blood coming out these doors that were opened by Death itself. Nuclear torpedo number 2. The Poseidon intercontinental nuclear-powered, nuclear-armed autonomous torpedo. HiSutton.com. So here we see its size. Prototype reference material from Russian MOD video released July 2018. A test vehicle compared to the Harpsichord 2P2M for reference. At the bottom, the little yellow submarine, or whatever it is. Horrible, it's better to get rid of all these weapons of mass destruction and have a moratorium on 5G like so many scientists want, a moratorium on depleted uranium. Of course, people can always look at these pictures of depleted uranium children with the most horrible birth defects, so that's why we must have a moratorium, a ban of depleted uranium as well. And a ban of the gene drive mass extinction technology that 170 global groups want a moratorium on. They were at the UN convention, and the Luciferian UN, of course, turned down their moratorium ban on gene drive mass extinction technology proposal because they're the Freemasons behind this population reduction, infiltrating governments, the secret societies Kennedy warned us about. And according to an illustration on citizens.action.network on Facebook, the Jesuits control all these intel agencies, and they're all Luciferian, they're all Freemasonic. And that Luciferian oath is about poisoning the population with heavy metals, etc. And the Jesuits were expelled from lots of countries as well. What is the other picture behind it? I want to turn that other one off. Got it. Okay. So this is an example of what these nuclear torpedoes could do with 90-meter high tidal waves. And then people would also need water-resistant bomb shelter to survive that. I've been thinking perhaps it is possible to create a metal pod, basically, or something that starts floating when this happens. But then you have to have enough food as well. Another animated GIF. Previous one was better, perhaps. So we see how these skyscrapers would also be demolished by the tidal wave. So preventing all this, I think, is best for humanity and also the other species on our planet. Preventing beats curing. And of course, there's always a risk. These 7 billion people don't want to die. And there are very smart, good people that are trying to prevent this world war. Of course, there are also people that would benefit from it with their underground cities. I read that bankers, the Rothschilds, for example, profit from what, according to many people, are illegal wars. For example, these wars in the Middle East. They profit from these wars because they lend the money on the condition that the victor pays the debt of the vanquished. So we must think of a system or construction where that can't happen anymore, where they would not benefit from war, only from peace. Prevent, stall, contain and end World War III. I've added sabotage. And then the false flag attack on 2 cancer oil tankers. Eyewitness saw flying projectile hole in ship above waterline. This was when? 2018-19. So the thing is, they pretend, or they claim, that it was done with mines that float in the water, but then the hole would not be above the waterline and somebody would not, an eyewitness would not have seen a flying projectile. Of course, this is a joke. So I'm sure Netanyahu or Gantz didn't fire the drones or the missiles himself. So it was just a picture of Netanyahu visiting a submarine and another one of a tanker that was struck. So it's just a joke. Alright, then we've covered all that. Then we can move to the browser for the articles to see what's happening, because I haven't studied it a lot yet. Oh, sorry for the black screen. There. Here are Cites evidence. Oh, evidence. This is Bloomberg.com. Politics US Cites evidence, it says, shows Iran was behind tanker attack. Well, of course, if this is a false flag attack, then how can people ever pretend? How can they prove? How can they prove that it was or was not an Iranian drone? Of course, they can have a stolen drone or a drone that looks exactly like an Iranian drone that has been made to look like it was produced in Iran. That's the thing with war, it's deception. War is always a crime. Perhaps I should start on this page, antiwar.com. Gantz says Israel is ready to attack Iran. US says Iran's new president should, quote, seize opportunity for diplomacy, unquote. Israeli DM falsely says Iran 10 weeks away from nuke material goal. So I definitely plan to read that as well. Two cancer oil tankers attacked, sparking oil supply fears. Huffington Post, HuffPost.com, that was in 2019. Strait of Hormuz. I used to know the names of these tankers. But okay, it doesn't matter. I've just shown the picture and explained it, what happened back then. So then I'm going from left to right again. The Sun.co.uk reports blast mystery explosion at Iran drone factory injures 9 workers after Israel accused Tehran of arming Hamas militants. 24th of May, and it's now the 6th of August. So I searched on World War Iran and then I update that now. So people are very quick to assume World War III is about to start, but people have been doing that throughout the ages, throughout YouTube decennia, throughout the ages. So, what is that based on? Often it's based on prophecy, but Armageddon, Harmageddo, fighting on the horses, etc., with horses, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, may already have happened, because they're not gonna fight this war on horses, because they have EMP, electromagnetic pulse resistant tanks, so it makes no sense, and probably that already happened. So Iran 10 weeks away to build nuclear bomb, World War III fears, world today. Well, as we read on anti-war, Israeli DM falsely says Iran 10 weeks away from nuke material goal. Changes to what I'm saying are made illegally with a synthetic telepathy machine, and it's part of trying to play us out against each other and decimating the global population. More about it also on my other channels, Perfect Society and Genuine News on YouTube, for example. 5 Iranian Revolutionary Guards ships destroyed port of Linja Avaz, hashtag World War III, WW3, Israel. Hashtag WW3 World War III, hashtag Iran's President Raisi reiterated that Tehran's nuclear program is peaceful. Yeah, they've already denied this attack, so then they cannot just neglect their side of the story, basically. World War III, Israel getting ready to attack Iran on Bakar Ahmad, the channel with 2 links to RT.com channels and 1 link to the BBC article. August 1st. I can also check a video. US, UK and Israel blame Iran for ship attack, Tehran denied. So I'm just reviewing these articles before I can say anything sensible about this. But I think it is possible no one can prove to me that this was not a false flag done by the US or Israeli intelligence officials to start rather than prevent a world war. And the idea might help to prevent a world war, prevent any attacks from both sides, to de-escalate. And again, there are people that would benefit from a world war. The United States has joined the United Kingdom and Israel in accusing Iran of carrying out a deadly drone strike that killed 2 aboard a tanker of Oman. So universal peace is a lot better. The risk of the earth being split when one of these countries loses is too big, basically. This is on Yahoo News. US military says photos show damage Iranian-made, quote, kamikaze, unquote, drone packed with explosives did in deadly tanker attack. US military released photos of the damage a, quote, kamikaze, unquote, drone did to a tanker last week. The drone, experts concluded, was made by Iran and resembled drones used in other attacks. And who are these so-called experts? Luciferians of the UN or American or Israeli so-called experts, or perhaps Iranian experts. Israel's defense minister threatens Iran with military strike after deadly drone attack. Popular. The drone, experts concluded, was made by Iran, resembles drones used in other attacks. It was packed with explosives and, quote, rigged to cause injury and destruction, unquote, experts said. The photo that is shared EOD site assessment of Iranian attack. So how big is that hole? Is it just a tiny hole? Internal view of Iranian UAV impact site. It's kind of hard to see how big that would be. From UAV on Mercer Street. So if it was a false flag attack, then they've already set it up to make it look like it was done by Iran, obviously. Vertical stabilizer on Iranian UAV. Forensic conclusions. One verified components of the Iranian one-way attack UAV were identical to previously identified Iranian unmanned one-way attack systems that may also have been created by the US and made to look like Iranian attack drones, in theory, and to confirm the Iranian UAV was explosive laden. So not bin Laden, but Laden. And sources online claim that bin Laden's real name is Tim Osman and he is a CIA operative, and they faked his death also. Here's why CENTCOM thinks Iran was behind a fatal drone attack on a ship last month. What is Mercer Street? From UAV on Mercer Street. So can we see that part on here as well? If that's the same thing. Vertical stabilizer identical to Iranian UAV. MarineCorpTimes.com. Iranian UAV attack on MT Mercer Street. That's the name of the vessel. While attacks on merchant ships in the Middle East have increased in recent years, the Mercer Street strike is believed to be the first such attack to result in loss of life. So here we can see a hand of a person, so that hole is really not that big. So if it was made in Iran, it may also have been stolen from Iran. Of course, with the scalar technology, they can do a lot of stuff. For example, fly-by-wire planes can only be controlled electronically. The hydraulics can only be controlled electronically. So that means that with the scalar technology, radiant energy patent of Nikola Tesla and the so-called supercomputers marked the beast by some. Quantum computers D-Wave and what's the other brand again? NSA uses the Cray.com computers. So they're not Cray aliens to Cray computers in reality that control the human mind with synthetic telepathy. It's a time-traveling synthetic telepathy machine. So with the neural network, so-called supercomputers, and this technology, they can remotely turn computers and equipment on or off. So that means they can control these fly-by-wire planes, if they can take over the flight computer, then they can control the Gensco-Citagnales plane and the pilots cannot control it anymore. So that can also be used to hijack drones, etc. So that's an important point, that they would make it look like Iran did it instead of help to uncover who really did this. Because we can always ask cui bono, who benefits. So that's the other one with the picture material. US military photo of drone strike damage to tanker Mercer Street, CENTCOM. So then there were people on deck or in that compartment or something, if they were killed by this. And I'm not seeing any pictures of the people that were hit, supposedly. Perhaps it struck the cabin. Israel names Iranian drone commander who is allegedly behind deadly ship attacks. Amir Ali Hadizadeh, head of the IRGC's Air Force, is behind dozens of terrorist attacks in the region using unmanned aerial vehicles and missiles, unquote, Gantz told UN Security Council envoys during a briefing at the Foreign Ministry in Jerusalem. I'm definitely going to watch this video. Israel lobbyist suggests false flag attack to start war with Iran, August 7th, 2016, on the YouTube channel Chan. Possible Iran false flag in Gulf of Oman, and Israel attacks Syria again. And this was June 14th, 2019. This is on stillnessinthestorm.com. And this is nexusnewsfeed.com. Yep. Iran claims Israel attack was a false flag. And I don't see a year on this. It's oh, here it says 2018, source 0 hatch 2018. I already thought it wasn't this year. Perhaps I'm the first to report about this idea of another possible false flag attack. Insider says Israel, in the case of the USS Ronald Reagan, which sounds like Ray Gun basically. Insider says Israel poised to stage false flag attack against US targets to start war with Iran. Is this 2019? Yeah. Well, that was a decade ago or something. General Wesley Clark. We're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq, and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran, quote. US wars against the Mid East were planned long before 9/11. Satanic plan to slaughter, we read on gmmuk.com. Same illustration, bigger. Retired 4-star US Army General, Supreme Allied Commander of NATO. Yeah, I want to read this one. Israeli DM falsely says Iran 10 weeks away from nuke material goal. Defense Minister, I guess. And US says Iran's new president should, quote, seize opportunity for diplomacy, unquote. Let's see. A charge Tehran denies. The United States and Saudi Arabia blamed Iran for last month's attacks using limpet mines on 4 tankers off the coast of the United Arab Emirates, a charge Tehran denies. And this was 2019. About these 2 cancer oil tankers. And I'm just looking for an article. UK and Israel experts from which concurred with the US military's findings have also blamed Iran for the July 30th attack. The Iranian government, however, has denied any involvement. Tehran has denied involvement in the attack. A charge Tehran denies, so that's the same narrative practically for these 2 things. So where should I begin? Perhaps it's best if I start Jan says Israel is ready to attack Iran. Well, if they don't have an agreement with Russia, the ally of Iran, then there could be a world war, and perhaps they've planned this world war, and somebody told me that their epidemics supersede their wars, basically, so they've used this technique more often in human history. So I'll start with this one. Let's see if this reads.
Gantz says Israel is ready to attack.
I'm going to use the text-to-speech engine. So preventing beats curing.
Gantz says Israel is ready to attack Iran. Iran warned Israel any attacks would be met with a decisive response by Dave DeCamp, posted on August 5, 2021. Categories News tags Iran. Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz stepped up his threats against Iran on Thursday and said Israel is ready to attack the Islamic Republic. Israel has blamed Iran for last week's drone attack on a Japanese-owned Israeli-linked ship near Oman that killed a British crew member and a Romanian crew member, but Tehran strongly denies that it was responsible. When asked in an interview with UNIT if Israel was prepared to attack Iran, Gantz replied, "Yes." The Israeli defense minister is urging other countries to take action against the Islamic Republic. "We are at a point where we need to take military action against Iran," he said. "The world needs to take action against Iran now." Responding to Gantz's threat, Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Saeed Khatibzadeh said Israel's behavior is only possible through Western support. Khatibzadeh wrote on Twitter, "In another brazen violation of international law, Israeli regime now blatantly threatens Iran with military action. Such malign behavior stems from blind Western support." He added that any Israeli attacks would be met with a decisive response. The U.S. has accepted Israel's narrative and is blaming Iran for the tanker attack. On Sunday, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the U.S. was working with allies on a response. "We are working with our partners to consider our next steps and consulting with governments inside the region and beyond on an appropriate response, which will be forthcoming," he said. Britain will raise the tanker attack at a UN Security Council meeting on Friday, but the body is not expected to agree to take action. The UK told the Security Council on Tuesday that it is highly likely Iran was behind the incident, leaving room for doubt and suggesting Israel's evidence it claims to have is not clear-cut. Russia has raised doubts about the claims. "There's a lot of conflicting information, a highly likely analysis is, which we totally reject. We need to establish facts. We don't need to rush to any conclusions or actions without having proof of what has happened," Deputy Russian UN Ambassador Dmitry Polyansky said on Wednesday. Israel has a long history of attacking Iran covertly, including by sabotaging Iranian ships. In March, the Wall Street Journal reported that Israel had attacked at least a dozen ships that were either Iranian or carrying Iranian fuel since 2019. Iran has brought up these incidents when defending itself, accusing the West of hypocrisy for never condemning Israel's attacks on commercial shipping in the region. There have also been reported drone attacks against Iranian ships. In April, an Iranian fuel tanker was reported to be attacked by either a drone or missile off the coast of Syria that killed 3 Syrians, including 2 crew members, according to the UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. Preventing beats curing. Be prepared, everyone. Form real resistance to death, our common enemy. Safety first. Mir, Salam, Shalom, Hiwa, Major typing on, Shanti Shanti. Universal Everton now. Universal peace now.
Alright, so I fixed the text-to-speech engine and I can use it more often. So let's watch. Israel lobbyist suggests false flag attack to start war with Iran. August 7th, 2016. So a false flag is basically an attack using a flag of an enemy, pretending you're the enemy basically, so that it looks like the enemy did it to themselves or the enemy did the attacks to make it seem to the public a retaliation is justified, etc. So war is deception. Also the former Mossad motto, by way of deception thou shalt do war, Proverbs 24:6 for example. Disgusting.
I frankly think that crisis initiation is really tough. And And it's very hard for me to see how the United States president can get us to war with Iran. Which leads me to conclude that if, in fact, compromise is not coming, that the traditional way of America gets to war is what would be best for U.S. interests. Some people might think that Mr. Roosevelt wanted to get us into World War II, as David mentioned. You may recall we had to wait for Pearl Harbor. Some people might think Mr. Wilson wanted to get us into World War I. You may recall he had to wait for the Lusitania episode. Some people might think that Mr. Johnson wanted to send troops to Vietnam. You may recall he had to wait for the Gulf of Tonkin episode. We didn't go to war with Spain until the until the Maine exploded. And may I point out that Mr. Lincoln did not feel he could call out the Federal Army until Fort Sumter was attacked, which is why he ordered the commander at Fort Sumter to do exactly that thing which the South Carolinians had said would cause an attack. So if, in fact, the Iranians aren't going to compromise, it would be best if somebody else started the war. One can combine other means of pressure with sanctions. I mentioned that explosion on August 17th. We could step up the pressure. I mean, look, people, Iranian submarines periodically go down. Someday one of them might not come up. Who would know why? We can do a variety of things if we wish to increase the pressure. I'm not advocating that. But I'm just suggesting that this is not a either-or proposition. You know, it's just sanctions has to succeed or other things. We are in the game of using covert means against the Iranians. We could get nastier at that.
Okay. Whatever creates universal peace, whatever is best for the people. Above all, we can all think about what we can do to prevent a possibly planned world war and create universal peace, control these factors that control aging, create a perfect society rather than hell on earth, or the Antichrist's pandemonium, Orwellian nightmare, that type of thing. We don't need it. So what would be another interesting one to read? This is on news.yahoo.com. Israel's defense minister threatens Iran with military strike after deadly drone attack. Read the original article on Business Insider. But it's quite a while ago already.
Israel's defense minister threatens Iran with military strike after deadly drone attack. John Haltewinger. 23 hours ago, Israeli military chief Lieutenant General Benny Gantz attends a news conference in Tel Aviv, Israel, July 28, 2014. Reuters. Nir Elias. Israeli military chief Lieutenant General Benny Gantz attends a news conference in Tel Aviv. Reuters. Israel's defense minister said his country is prepared to attack Iran. "We are at a point where we need to take military action against Iran," Gantz said Thursday. This came after a deadly drone strike on an Israeli-managed tanker that Israel, the US, and UK blamed on Iran. Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz on Thursday said Israel was prepared to attack Iran following a deadly drone strike on an oil tanker off the coast of Oman that has raised tensions in the region. "We are at a point where we need to take military action against Iran," Gantz told the news website Cites. Per the Associated Press, the world needs to take action against Iran now. The US, UK, and Israel blamed Iran for the drone strike, which targeted a tanker linked to an Israeli billionaire, though none of the countries have brought forward evidence to substantiate the allegation. Two crew members, a British national and a Romanian citizen, were killed. Iran denied any involvement in the fatal drone attack. Iran has.
So if this was done by individuals without cooperation of the Iranian military and or government, that's another possibility, then it's not worth starting World War III over. That's clear. We must prevent World War III by any means necessary.
Been linked to or accused of a number of attacks on oil tankers in the region since 2019 amid growing tensions with Israel and the West, largely a product of the US, UK, and Israel blamed Iran for the drone strike, which targeted a tanker linked to an Israeli billionaire, though none of the countries have brought forward evidence to substantiate the allegation. 2 crew members, a British national and a Romanian citizen, were killed. Iran denied any involvement in the fatal drone attack. Iran has been linked to or accused of a number of attacks on oil tankers in the region since 2019 amid growing tensions with Israel and the West, largely a product of President Donald Trump's controversial decision to withdraw the U.S. from the 2015 nuclear deal. Iranian oil tankers have also been attacked. In a tweet on Thursday responding to Gantz, Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Saeed Khatibzadeh said, in another brazen violation of international law, Israeli regime now blatantly threatens Iran with military action. Such malign behavior stems from blind Western support. We state this clearly, any foolish act against Iran will be met with a decisive response. Don't test us. Gantz's warning to Tehran on Thursday came as Iran swore in a new president, Ebrahim Raisi. It also came with talks aimed at reviving the 2015 deal, which the Israeli government opposes, still up in the air, and with the U.S. increasingly warning that time is running out to save the agreement. Raisi is a hardliner and protege of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who has made it clear he's not especially interested in diplomacy with the U.S. or its allies, though he's endorsed the talks aimed at restoring the 2015 nuclear agreement. After being sworn in, Raisi reiterated the Iranian government's call for the U.S. to lift economic sanctions. The Iranian people expect the new government to improve their livelihoods, Raisi said. Per Reuters, all illegal U.S. sanctions against the Iranian nation must be lifted. The 2015 nuclear deal sought to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon in exchange for relief from economic sanctions. After abandoning the deal, Trump imposed harsh sanctions on Iran as part of a maximum pressure strategy that aimed to push Tehran into negotiating a more stringent version of the 2015 pact. Trump's approach did not work, and largely served to increase tensions between the U.S. and Iran while sparking fears of a new conflict in the Middle East. Meanwhile, Iran gradually took steps away from the limitations placed on its nuclear program under the deal. President Joe Biden made reviving the 2015 deal a top foreign policy priority, and U.S. and Iranian negotiators have engaged in 6 rounds of indirect talks in Vienna aimed at bringing it back to life. But Iran in July moved to stall the talks as it prepared to inaugurate Raisi. Iran has maintained it will not return to compliance with the 2015 pact until the U.S. lifts sanctions, while the Biden administration has insisted that Tehran show it's behaving in accordance with the deal before providing sanctions relief. Now watch, pro-driver explains high-threat driving techniques used by military personnel. More, Israel-Iran nuclear deal. Benny Gantz Insider Business Insider.
Okay, gmmuk.com. Insider says Israel poised to stage false flag attack against US targets to start war with Iran. May 15th, 2019. And that's the topic.
Insider says Israel poised to stage false flag attack against U.S. targets to start war with Iran. May 15, 2019. Michael Dinian News. Now I don't know who this insider is, and to be perfectly honest, I don't care, because whichever way you cut it, getting America to attack Iran has always been Netanyahu's chief goal. If by now it isn't obvious to everyone that this maniac, along with the entire Zionist-controlled media, are prepared to make up any cock and bull story to destroy yet another nation that's done absolutely nothing, then you simply have to be brain dead or just plain evil. In any case, what earthly reason do I have to cut any slack for the same neocon Zionists who unquestionably planned and executed 9/11? None of this madness today would be occurring if it wasn't for them. As we know only too well, General Wesley Clark, who just a few weeks after 9/11 stated, the plan all along was to manufacture a bogus war on terror for the purpose of destroying 7 Arab, Muslim nations, Iran being the final stage of what effectively is Oded Yiannon's 1982 plan for the creation of Greater Israel.
So, in this article they basically blame the Zionists, but according to Eric John Phelps, who maybe controlled the position flat earther now, the Jesuits ordered the demolition of the WTC. The Jesuit Peter Hans Kolvenbach, to be more specific. And with these things I think it's best to be as specific as possible to prevent innocent people from becoming victims. That's what they want, basically, to play us all out against each other, to reduce the global population, decimate the populations of countries, to impose their new world order, to accumulate wealth and power, to reduce the global population to a more controllable, enslavable number. More about it on my other channels as well.
But there's another reason why we simply have to throw caution to the wind. We know they want to attack Iran. Most of us realize the excuse to attack Iran will come via false flag attack, either America attacking its own forces or Israel attacking a designated American target. You can be sure Israel will not be the false flag target. Whatever happens, Iran will be blamed. Therefore, the only option we have is to spread the word so that as many people as possible become aware this is what they have in mind. Who knows, if enough pressure can be created, the warmongers might be forced into thinking again. We have to spread the word. Doing nothing is not an option. Here are 2 articles that need to be read and then sprayed around like confetti. Insider says Israel poised to stage false flag attack against U.S. targets to start war with Iran. Insider says Israel poised to stage false flag attack against U.S. targets to start war with Iran. Here's an excerpt. The details are harrowing to say the least. At best, this is nothing less than indiscriminate, organized mass murder of millions of innocent folk. At worst it could mean total annihilation. I always felt if anyone was going to be responsible for starting WW3, Benjamin Netanyahu would be the one. 100 tactical nukes will be used to eliminate the Iranian military. 120,000 U.S. ground troops will be used in the invasion. France, the UK, Canada, Saudi Arabia and Israel are expected to join a coalition in support of the war. CIA assets and counter-intel efforts have been ramped up over the past year in preparation. A false flag is being prepared to be used before the war with Iran. Propaganda is being prepped by White House and Israeli counterparts. Israel will support the effort, and Benjamin Netanyahu was reportedly smiling ear to ear during a recent meeting with John Bolton. There are concerns Trump's base may resist or criticize the efforts, so further propaganda efforts are being made to shore up support for the war. Expected casualties range between 1.2 million and 2 million Iranians and 5,000 U.S. troops. Stop WW3, hands off Iran.
Well, that's interesting. Not a word about Russia, the ally of Iran. I did broadcast about it as well. Putin. Putin says US attack on Iran would be a catastrophe. June 20th, 2019, said Moscow believed Tehran was in full compliance with its nuclear commitments and called sanctions against Iran groundless. Reuters. Vladimir Putin has significantly strengthened his grip on power, with voters approving changes to the Russian constitution, which will allow him to remain president for at least another 16 years. News.com.au, July 2nd, 2020. Russian President Vladimir Putin gave final approval to legislation allowing him to hold office for 2 additional 6-year terms today, Monday, April 5th, giving himself the possibility to stay in power until 2036. Euroweeklynews.com, 5th of April 2021. Putin gives himself 100% pay raise. The Sydney Morning Herald, smh.com.au, April 19th, 2004. How Vladimir Putin has cracked down on Russia's internet. Well, basically they have an emergency internet, so if the internet would be hacked or go down for some reason, they already have a second internet in place. And of course, Putin is also associated with Novichok or Novikok. Russian for New Boy is a series of binary chemical weapons developed by the Soviet Union and Russia between 1971 and 1993. They were designed as part of a Soviet program codenamed Valiant. Wiki. Population reduction is called population control by the establishment. Did I read this one already? Let's read this one again. If I read it already, I was busy with other stuff. People can fast forward. After this live stream ends, it will be on emergency channel on YouTube.
Israeli DM falsely accuses Iran of being 10 weeks away from nuke material. Gulgans declares it is time for military deeds against Iran by Jason Ditz, posted on August 4, 2021. Categories news tags Iran, Israel. Israeli accusations against Iran continue with the new government there, as Israel's Defense Minister Benny Gantz informed the UN Security Council that he believes.
So, Russia will see the US and or Israel as the aggressors if they take military action or do military deeds against Iran. That's clear. Tehran already denied the attack in the strongest terms, and I'd have to study it more. If Putin says, well, it is proven, then I don't know if he'd support Iran, or if he'd say, well, I doubt if he'd say, okay, the US can do whatever they want to. I had a list of preventing World War III, covered in previous broadcasts on other channels. I'm looking for a piece of text, so let's read on in the meantime.
Israeli DM falsely accuses Iran of being 10 weeks away from nuke material goal. Gantz declares it is time for military deeds against Iran by Jason Ditz, posted on August 4, 2021. Categories: News tags Iran, Israel. Israeli accusations against Iran continue with the new government there, as Israel's Defense Minister Benny Gantz informed the UN Security Council that he believes it is time for UN action, including military action, against Iran. Israel wanting a war against Iran is hardly new, and is virtually the defining characteristic of recent Israeli governments. The excuse is routine too, as Gantz is claiming Iran is 10 weeks away from having enough weapons-grade material to make a nuclear weapon. This is a commonly recycled accusation, and as is usually the case, Israel is wrong. The supposition is based around the idea that Iran's civilian enrichment of uranium continues, and they have such and such amount, which further enriched to a certain level could be weaponized. Yet in practice, Iran has no weapons-grade uranium, and has never attempted to enrich up to those levels. The Iranian stockpile of enriched uranium is growing chiefly because the U.S., at Israel's behest, is preventing them from exporting uranium for conversion to fuel, which was part of the P5+1 nuclear deal. Either way, Israel's claim is based on the idea that the entire civilian program has this secret military dimension, and that at some point Iran is just going to drop everything and race for a breakout to a nuclear weapon. 10 weeks, built around that idea, is built around Israel being right about Iran's intentions, which for years haven't panned out, as Israel has been accusing Iran of being on the brink of nuclear arms for decades. Their timing also assumes Iran perfectly achieves all of these further enrichment, which they've never done before, without any delays. Getting to enrichment, Iran would hypothetically have to then achieve full weaponization and the miniaturization of the arms to a deliverable form. All of that is highly unlikely in a 10-week period, and even then, the biggest problem with the Israeli accusation, ever present but rarely acknowledged, is that all of this, best case and with their entire stockpile, is meant to be enough to produce one bomb. But if Iran did that and wanted to let the world know that they are a nuclear power, ideally done soon enough that they aren't immediately attacked, they'd have to perform a test explosion. At that point, Iran would have used its entire stockpile to make one bomb, blown up the bomb to prove it works, and then have nothing left to show for it.
So they write, Iran could build a nuclear bomb, quote, within 10 weeks, unquote. So that means they don't have one yet. If he is right about it, whoever claimed that. Israel warns Tehran is only, quote, 10 weeks away, unquote, from acquiring weapons-grade materials. Fox News 1 day ago. Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz has warned UN Security Council diplomats this week.
To prevent a world war over Iran sanctions, 1. Biden is advised not to press ahead with what some would consider illegal sanctions. Iran does not have any nuclear weapon and therefore any sanctions are unjustified. 2. Rooney is advised not to press ahead with transporting cancer oil to countries Trump has forbidden Iran to transport oil to as part of legal or illegal sanctions and to make agreements with both Trump and Putin. 3. Trump is advised to have an agreement with Russian President Putin before taking any action. 4. Putin is advised to prevent any type of retaliation if required to prevent World War III, and create universal peace instead.
Okay, Trump has to be replaced with Biden, of course, in this list.
A world war must be prevented by any means necessary. To prevent a world war over Iran sanctions, 1. Biden is advised not to press ahead with what some would consider illegal sanctions. Iran does not have any nuclear weapon and therefore any sanctions are unjustified. 2. Rooney is advised not to press ahead with transporting cancer oil to countries Trump has forbidden Iran to transport oil to as part of legal or illegal sanctions and to make agreements with both Biden and Putin.
So that will be Raisi, I think. Instead of Rouhani. Or Rouhani.
3. Biden is advised to have an agreement with Russian President Putin before taking any action. 4. Putin is advised to prevent any type of retaliation if required to prevent World War III, and create universal peace instead. U.S. says Iran's new president should seize opportunity for diplomacy. Ebrahim Raisi took his oath of office Thursday by Dave DeCamp, posted on August 5, 2021. Categories News tags Iran on Thursday. The U.S. State Department said the U.S. hopes Iran's new president Ebrahim Raisi seizes the opportunity for diplomacy as the talks to revive the nuclear deal, known as the JCPOA, have been stalled since June. State Department spokesman Ned Price also warned that the JCPOA talks could not go on forever, something U.S. officials have been repeating. This process.
JCPOA is the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. I haven't remembered it.
Cannot go on indefinitely. The opportunity to achieve a mutual return to compliance with the JCPOA won't last forever, Price said. Raisi took his oath of office Thursday after being formally endorsed by Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei earlier in the week. The new president is viewed as a hardliner, but has endorsed a JCPOA revival and said Tuesday that he would work to get cruel U.S. sanctions lifted, signaling his willingness to continue talks with Washington. The last round of JCPOA talks concluded on June 20 and have been on hold during Iran's transition period. The U.S. blames Iran for the delay, but the negotiations started in April and were initially dragged out because of the Biden administration's refusal to lift all Trump-era sanctions, forcing Tehran to negotiate limited sanctions relief. During the negotiations, the two sides made additional requests on top of the original deal they could not agree on, according to Khamenei and a German involved in the talks who spoke with CNBC. Khamenei said the U.S. wants to include a sentence to the deal that would obligate Iran to pursue further negotiations with the U.S. over other issues, such as the Islamic Republic's ballistic missile program. By putting this sentence, they want to provide an excuse for their further interventions on the principle of the deal, and missile program and regional issues. Khamenei said last week, if Iran refuses to discuss them, they will say that you have violated the agreement and the agreement is over. The Supreme Leader said that while the U.S. wants a guarantee for more negotiations in writing, Washington does not want to provide a written guarantee that it would not withdraw from the deal again, as it did in 2018. He said the Iranians are also asking for a verification mechanism to ensure the U.S. provides the sanctions relief it promises, another thing the U.S. does not want to do.
So I'm wondering if it would be a good or a bad thing if everybody would circle back on this stuff. But let's read the next article while I roll. It's possible I already read one of these, but I wasn't paying attention. So sorry about that, if I'm reading the same article twice. But this is on antiwar.com. news.antiwar.com.
Gantz says Israel is ready to attack Iran. Iran warned Israel any attacks would be met with a decisive Gantz says Israel is ready to attack Iran. Iran warned Israel any attacks would be met with a decisive response by Dave DeCamp, posted on August 5, 2021. Categories News tags Iran. Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz stepped up his threats against Iran on Thursday and said Israel is ready to attack the Islamic Republic. Israel has blamed Iran for last week's drone attack on a Japanese-owned Israeli-linked ship near Oman that killed a British crew member and a Romanian crew member, but Tehran strongly denies that it was responsible. When asked in an interview with UNIT if Israel was prepared to attack Iran, Gantz replied, "Yes." The Israeli defense minister is urging other countries to take action against the Islamic Republic. "We are at a point where we need to take military action against Iran," he said. "The world needs to take action against Iran now." Responding to Gantz's threat, Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Saeed Khatibzadeh said Israel's behavior is only possible through Western support. Khatibzadeh wrote on Twitter, "In another brazen violation of international law, Israeli regime now blatantly threatens Iran with military action."
Well, I remember that Trump prevented a world war by claiming there must not be a disproportional response to these drone attacks, basically. So punishment must always be proportional to the crime to do justice, otherwise you're doing injustice. And depending on how disproportional the punishment is, you're doing more injustice.
Such malign behavior stems from blind Western support. He added that any Israeli attacks would be met with a decisive response. The U.S. has accepted Israel's narrative and is blaming Iran for the tanker attack. On Sunday, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the U.S. was working with allies on a response. "We are working with our partners to consider our next steps and consulting with governments inside the region and beyond on an appropriate response, which will be forthcoming," he said.
So Tehran, Iran already denied doing the attack.
Britain will raise the tanker attack at a UN Security Council meeting on Friday, but the body is not expected to agree to take action. The UK told the Security Council on Tuesday that it is highly likely Iran was behind the incident, leaving room for doubt and suggesting Israel's evidence it claims to have is not clear-cut. Russia has raised doubts about the claims. "There's a lot of conflicting information," a highly likely analyst is, "which we totally reject. We need to establish facts. We don't need to rush to any conclusions or actions without having proof of what has happened," Deputy Russian UN Ambassador Dmitry Polyansky said on Wednesday. Israel has a long history of attacking Iran covertly, including by sabotaging Iranian ships. In March, The Wall Street Journal reported that Israel had attacked at least a dozen ships that were either Iranian or carrying Iranian fuel since 2019. Iran has brought up these incidents when defending itself, accusing the West of hypocrisy for never condemning Israel's attacks on commercial shipping in the region. There have also been reported drone attacks against Iranian ships. In April, an Iranian fuel tanker was reported to be attacked by either a drone or missile off the coast of Syria that killed 3 Syrians, including 2 crew members, according to the UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights.
MarineCorpsTimes.com.
Here's why CENTCOM thinks Iran was behind a fatal drone attack on a Here's why CENTCOM thinks Iran was behind a fatal drone attack on a ship last month. Jeff Zielwich's 1 hour ago. U.S. Central Command on Friday released images that an exploding drone used in the fatal July 30th attack on a commercial ship in the Middle East matches known Iranian exploding drones. U.S. Central Command released evidence Friday that it says proves that an explosive aerial drone used in a July 30th fatal attack on the tanker ship Mercer Street off Oman was Iranian-made. While attacks on merchant ships in the Middle East have increased in recent years, the Mercer Street strike is believed to be the first such attack to result in loss of life. The drone was carrying military-grade explosives, and wing wreckage recovered by Navy investigators matches known Iranian drones, according to the combatant command, which based its findings on an investigation conducted by a team from the aircraft carrier Ronald Reagan. The carrier escorted the stricken ship to safety following the attack. Verified components of the Iranian one-way attack drone were identical to previously identified Iranian unmanned one-way attack systems, the command said in a slideshow laying out its evidence. The drone crashed into Mercer Street and detonated, leaving a 6-foot-wide hole in the pilot house while killing a Romanian citizen who was master of the ship and a British national working security, according to CENTCOM. An image released by U.S. Central Command Friday shows a 6-foot hole in the pilot house of the commercial ship Mercer Street after it was struck by an exploding drone off Oman on July 30th. 2 crew members died in the attack. U.S. Central Command. An image released by U.S. Central Command Friday shows a 6-foot hole in the pilot house of the commercial ship Mercer Street after it was struck by an exploding drone off Oman on July 30th. 2 crew members died in the attack. U.S. Central Command explosive chemical tests revealed traces of RDX, a nitrate-based explosive, indicating the drone had been rigged to cause injury and destruction, the command said. Get the Marine Corps Times Daily News Roundup. Don't miss the top Marine Corps stories, delivered each afternoon. Enter your email address. Please select a country. Subscribe. Explosives experts were able to recover several pieces of this of, including a vertical stabilizer and internal components which were nearly identical to previously collected examples of Iranian one-way attack drones, CENTCOM said. The distance from the Iranian coast to the attack location was also within the range of documented Iranian one-way drone attacks, according to CENTCOM. Those recovered materials are being sent to a U.S. lab for further testing and verification. Mercer Street suffered an unsuccessful explosive drone attack the day before the fatal strike, on July 29, in which the drones crashed into the ocean near the ship, according to CENTCOM. Small remnants of those aircraft were pulled from the water by crew members. British and Israeli explosives experts also reviewed the drone evidence at U.S. Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain and reached similar conclusions, CENTCOM said. Sailors assigned to an odd unit board an MH-60S Seahawk helicopter on the flight deck of aircraft carrier USS Ronald Reagan to head to an oil tanker that was attacked off the coast of Oman in the Arabian Sea on Friday, July 30, 2021. Quinton Ali/U.S. Navy, via app, U.S. Navy says drone strike hit oil tanker off Oman, killing 2 Navy yard techs. Believe a drone strike targeted an oil tanker that came under attack off the coast of Oman. John Gambrill, The Associated Press. This drone was produced in Iran, the command said. What this will mean for U.S. military efforts to counter Iran in the Middle East remained unclear Friday. CENTCOM referred questions to the Pentagon and officials there did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin on Friday spoke with Israeli Minister of Defense Benjamin Benny Gantz about Iran's July 29 attack on the Mt. Mercer Street, which killed 2 innocent civilians, according to a Pentagon media release. Secretary Austin and Minister Gantz expressed concern about Iran's proliferation and employment of one-way attack hubs across the region and committed to continue cooperating closely on regional security. Austin and Gantz agreed to work together alongside allies and partners in condemning Iran's aggression that undermines freedom of navigation, and they exchanged views on next steps, according to the release. The ship is owned by an Israeli businessman, and that country's defense minister said Thursday that the country is prepared to strike Iran following the Mercer Street attack, the Associated Press reported. Speaking to the news website Cites, Gantz replied with a yes when asked if Israel was prepared to attack Iran. According to the app, "We are at a point where we need to take military action against Iran," Gantz said. "The world needs to take action against Iran now." Tehran has denied involvement in the attack, and a spokesman for the Iran's foreign ministry, Saeed Khatibzadeh, called Gantz's saber-rattling another brazen violation of international law, the app reported. "Any foolish act against Iran will be met with a decisive response," Khatibzadeh said in a tweet, according to the app. "Don't test us." Other Iranian officials have blamed Israel this week for being the primary source of instability in the region, and criticized the country for attacking commercial vessels carrying oil and humanitarian aid to Syria, according to the app. Another provocation occurred earlier this week, when hijackers seized an asphalt tanker near the United Arab Emirates before leaving the vessel, the app reported. No one claimed responsibility for the attack on the Asphalt Princess, but the app obtained radio communications showing that one of the ship's crew members referred to armed Iranians boarding the ship. Iran has denied involvement in the incident, according to the app, calling such recent incidents in the region completely suspicious.
So, after all these false flag attacks that we've seen in the past, why would anyone assume that this is not a false flag attack? So we should be very careful not to assume anything based on what they're telling us, because they're using deception. And actually there's a man, Harry Fox, who thinks that Mossad spread the bioweapon SARS-CoV-2. And there are 2 US senators that think it was a bioweapon. But I was looking for another picture. Oh, wait. I want to show that previous one. Okay. This is also interesting. The Black Eye Club is another subject also associated with adrenochrome, supposedly. But I'm looking for another image slideshow. Oh, I found it. Even Bernie Sanders. So who is punching them in the left or right eye? Sometimes it's the right eye, which perhaps they see as the wrong thing to do. It should be the wrong eye, if they're Satanists or whatever. So, if you know, let us know in the chat or Skype Prologic999. Then we can do a broadcast together. End the war now, bring the troops home. Stop the war, bring our boys home alive. No blood for cancer oil. No blood for soil. It's not worth it. What have we learned from our past? Tiananmen Square man. And there's one other image that I want to have in this broadcast. Universal peace now. Jesuit alumni, Loyola School, St. Ignatius, the coat of arms, wolf dancing around a witch's cauldron, basically. So they see the people as the sheep, the sheeple, and the themselves as the wolves. And Alex Jones is allegedly a Knight of Malta, like Trump, Biden, Frank Sinatra, also Adolf Hitler and others. The actor Bruce Willis as well, according to online sources. Of course, it's very hard to prove if that's a secret society. It may be impossible to prove or disprove it, because there can be minimal contact also via the internet. But theoretically they have meetings. It's clear the Bilderbergers have these meetings. Khamenei Netanyahu. But now it's Gantz. I also have a Gantz picture somewhere. How are you? Temple Mount Alternative. That's the one I want to show. So isn't the Al-Aqsa Mosque a lot more beautiful than the third temple, Beit HaMikdash? And wouldn't it be nicer to keep them both? So it's possible that they want to get rid of that Al-Aqsa Mosque, the Dome of the Rock, as it's called, with the beautiful golden dome and the blue stones, etc. And it looks a lot like the temple of, according to online sources, late Jeffrey Epstein. The Jesuit Inquisition. People can check the connection of the Jesuits with the Nazis online. And now we can read this last article. I think this is going to be the last one for now. This is Bloomberg.com. WTF. Take me back to the home page. Wow, that's annoying for everyone. Well, then I won't read the Bloomberg article, perhaps. The link is in the description of the video, so then I can turn on this one again and check the description of the video so that we can read the article.
https://www.
But they do that type of sabotage with their time-traveling neural network to eradicate 7 billion people and rule the world from Jerusalem. Obviously, the Jesuits are a military order. And they control these intel agencies that have that type of technology. The citizens do not. Though they may have bought a piece of intelligence. So then I should be careful I don't scroll too far.
US cites evidence that it says shows Iran.
Alright. I don't give up that easily. Not even when I'm tired of it all.
US cites evidence that it says shows Iran attacked tanker by David Weiner August 6, 2021, 1839 CEST updated on August 6, 2021, 2030 CEST. Recovered parts nearly identical to previous Iranian drones. Iran warns Israel against adventurism and miscalculations. The Mercer Street tanker in 2016. The oil tank reportedly came under attack off the coast of Oman on July 29. The Mercer Street tanker in 2016. The oil tank reportedly came under attack off the coast of Oman on July 29. Photographer, Johann Victor. App photo. Listen to article 213. Share this article. Share tweet post email in this article 06408881D Barbara Woodward Private Company CL1WTI Crew Dust 68.28/barrel. The U.S. cited evidence for the first time Friday to back up its assertion that Iran was behind the deadly drone attack on an Israeli-managed tanker last week. Multiple parts of the unmanned aerial vehicle that killed 2 crew members were recovered and were nearly identical to previously collected examples from Iranian one-way attack IVs, Captain Bill Urban, spokesman for U.S. Central Command, said in a statement. U.S. experts concluded based on the evidence that this IV was produced in Iran. 2 other drones targeting the ship were unsuccessful, he said. UK and Israeli explosive experts were given access to the evidence and concur with the U.S. findings, Urban said. Iran has denied it was behind the July 29 attack on the Mercer Street tanker off the coast of Oman. Quick take, understanding the shadow war between Israel and Iran. The U.S. statement came as the United Nations Security Council met behind closed doors on Friday to discuss the attack. We know that Iran was responsible for this attack, UK, Ambassador Barbara Woodward told reporters at the UN in New York after the council meeting. There is no justification for what happened, a state-sanctioned attack on a civilian vessel passing peacefully through international waters. But Iran's deputy envoy to the UN, Zahra Rashidi, said her country categorically rejects the accusation, warning Israel against any military action that might lead to an escalation in the region. Iran warns against such adventurism and miscalculations, she said. Iran will not hesitate to defend itself and secure its national interests. Also Friday, the G7 foreign ministers issued a statement concurring that all available evidence clearly points to Iran. The representatives from the US, UK, Canada, France, Germany, Italy and Japan and the European Union's High Representative said there is no justification for this attack and we will continue to do our utmost to protect all shipping, upon which the global economy depends. Tensions have escalated in and around the waterways of the Persian Gulf, vital for the world's oil markets, in the past week. The U.S. vowed a collective response with its allies but hasn't suggested what form that response will take. Israel's Defense Minister Benny Gantz said this week that Israel is prepared to attack Iran if need be, as his country lobbied for a response to the drone attack. Updates with comments from UK and Iranian envoys starting in 6th paragraph.
So hopefully Benny Gantz can create universal peace. And there are 15 scalar weapons according to sources online. But if they're all controlled by the Jesuits, I doubt it. I also produce my own scalar wave. Lift sanctions, then we'll talk. The supposedly moderate Zarif, death to America, Britain and Israel, unquote. People can check that video online as well. That's not very diplomatic, is it? Because most people in these countries are not people reducing the global population or warmongers that think they will benefit from a world war. They'd be victims, and most people would be against that, of course. And so some people would give their life to prevent a world war, if necessary. And it's clear some people have died for our freedom. Some of our ancestors died for the freedom we have now, fighting the Nazis, for example. Let's see, what picture can I use? I use this one to finish off this broadcast. Check if anybody wrote anything interesting in the chat. Esoteric truth. Superpower Iran will never ever submit to NATO. Well, thank you for your comments. I'm still building up viewers and audience on this channel, so please like, share and subscribe. I'll also be streaming live protests if I can. If I'm here, then I can do that. And the most important stuff, so this is an emergency, you could argue. This is a possible World War III threat, and they should prevent it by any means necessary. Work towards de-escalation, diplomatic talks, debates, and prevent any attacks from any side, to prevent more casualties, innocent civilians dying. And depleted uranium babies have that moratorium on depleted uranium, for example. Alright, so that's it for now. Thank you all for watching. Kiss for single ladies who would like one. And may peace be with you all. Hopefully there are smart people out there that help to prevent World War III. Prevent, stall, sabotage, contain and end World War III. Prevent mutually assured destruction, MAD. And World War III should never be. Strive for universal peace. So thinking about alternatives, you have to offer them an alternative that's better for them than what they have planned to do, to prevent them from doing that. But usually they don't do it unless they can control the outcome. And I've also shown the game Risk, so I think for themselves there may also be a risk involved with bunker buster bombs and nuclear torpedoes and scalar technology. And the only thing that can protect you, me and anybody else against scalar weapon attacks is the Tesla plasma shield that I've shown. So that's a good reason to prevent World War III, if you ask me. Perhaps I can make another version of this picture with Gans at the top, left top corner. And the other person there, that's a painting of Nostradamus, Moshiach Messiah blowing a so-called shofar, ram's horn. And I think they're both beautiful temples, though I think religion is an abomination, religion is an illusion, to quote Freud. So that should never be a reason to kill our fellow humans, but they get medals for that rather than put in prison or punished. So that's their setup. Oh yeah, that's that quote. Perhaps I can end with that one. It is forbidden to kill, therefore all murderers are punished unless they kill in large numbers and to the sound of trumpets. Voltaire, 1771. Mankind must put an end to war before war puts an end to mankind, with all these weapons of mass destruction. So I've covered these 4 moratoriums that we need. And that's it for now. I think it's a pretty good broadcast. So let me know what you think, especially ways to prevent a world war. And could the attack on the USS Ronald Reagan be a false flag attack carried out by US or Israeli intelligence agencies, is the question, or perhaps military? And if not, why not? And if you think it can be, why do you think that, etc.? I'd love to know, get more public feedback. But there are lots of people that know about their false flag attacks done in the past that I've also shown in that video. And, well, it reminds me of what we see happening now with Klaus Schwab about a deadly reset that we have to prevent, of course. People want to own something, and if we handle it right, the government will own nothing and we'll own everything. So it reminds me of these scenarios, SPARS and Event 201 and Cyber Polygon, that seem to supersede the real event, basically. So that's practically impossible. People can also watch that broadcast of Dead Zone, an episode of 2003, in which they mentioned coronavirus. They mentioned coronavirus, masks, China, and the cure in that episode of 2003 was hydroxychloroquine. So that's not possible without foreknowledge or a time-traveling AI, time-traveling synthetic telepathy machine that let them write the script. But they can also be Freemasons that know what they're going to do, and or people that try to warn us. Instead of predictive programming, it can be a warning to prevent all these things. Because I see all these videos with predictive programming on it. Why not preventive programming? Why must we all go along with that stupid narrative, basically? So, this is really it for now. It's 23:40 in the Netherlands. And people can always Skype me, ProLogic999 on Skype. Thank you all for uploading videos for a better timeline. Doing something for a better world for yourselves and others. That's more exciting than destroying everything and assuming that we're all gonna die and death is inevitable. There's no use, because everything is energy, everything is a possibility. Everything exists because of its counterpart on the molecular level, basically. Neutrons, protons, electrons. And according to scientists, even time itself is energy. Alright, so keep the natural species, don't replace them with Monsanto's GMOs. With that seed bank in Norway, they can bring back these species. And don't assume anything, so don't assume that they have planned it, but don't assume that they have not planned it either. They're a military order. So how else can they reduce the global population to 500 million to impose their new world order? How can we prevent it? What is a better alternative for themselves as well? The 7 billion people don't want to die, so I think whatever attempt they make is going to be risky for themselves as well. That there will always be people that they cannot buy that will do the right thing, and tyranny is never invincible. The tree of liberty is nourished with the blood of tyrants. Thomas Jefferson. It is its natural manure. And the limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress. Thomas Jefferson. A nation can survive its fools and even the ambitions, but it cannot survive treason from within, Marcus Tullius Cicero. I don't necessarily agree with it, because everything is energy, everything is possible. And to close it off, primum non nocere. Give them bread and circuses and they will never revolt. Perhaps an imperfect quote attributed to Juvenal. Alright. So this is really it for this broadcast. Thank you all for watching, for your likes, subscribes and shares. And yeah, I would like it if somebody would Skype me, then we can do a broadcast together. And we can go through the questions. You can ask me anything, or I can ask you questions, etc. So it can be about any topic. And be prepared with a radiological water filter, storable food, and a normal water filter. And whatever you think you need if there would be a world war. So a capsule in which we can survive a flooding, basically, that's another important idea. But one of the problems we have, we don't know what we can expect exactly, and most people don't have enough money to have their own farm and their own hydroponic grow-ups and bomb shelter safe room and their own electromagnetic stimulant device or stimulator. What was it called? Anyway, it's but I think everybody can produce their own scalar waves. That's easy to do. Anyway, breathing is also important. What else is there to say? What is really important? Whatever is most important. Safety first. And let's strive for peace with all these WMDs surrounding us all. For universal peace forever. I'm Ulrich Hoffman. See you next time on Emergency Channel on YouTube. Peace out.